Activities, how I put this into details and certain actions. Loves, helps, supports, talks, influences, emotionally looks after. The first time I did my matrix, you know what I put in activities? Coaches her. And when I realized, you understand, I didn't at that time. I precisely remember when I was coming back home, and she looks at me like this, right? And I say hello, we start talking, and finally she says, turn of the psychologist, turn on my husband. And me, being totally inside one of the roles, I look at her and I do the following. What do you really mean by that? So blind, so blind. Get this. What is the role that you have right now in front of yourselves is Dr. Matt, a teacher. This role works for you. You're happy. You paid for it. This is what you want. This role for my wife is a total disaster and is totally dysfunctional. Because if you teach someone, you have to have a premise that you know more. And it's okay in this scenario. But if I knew more than my wife, then I become an advisor and she becomes a customer. Do you understand how this operates? So I needed, my employees love their boss. But if I was boss for my daughter, this would cut her independence. So I need to be able to switch from one from another. And I notice that people do this unconsciously. Example, someone goes out from the office, there's a guy, he does this with his tie, and he carries on. He takes the jacket off. People have rituals how to step from one personality into another. If you make this consciously, you will be much more effective. So I stopped coaching her. And if it was as though magically, just like that, I stopped the behavior, 60% of our problems disappeared. Because for the first time, I started to listen without trying to change her. Listening without trying to change her has become therapeutic. She talked for 5 minutes. She said, I love you. And suddenly, magically, she was saved. I go, but I didn't do anything. I was used to the therapeutical concept of I need to coach you, I need to use cognitive behavioral therapy with you, I need to use tools. No, with wives. With wives, I simply would nod my hand, listen, don't interrupt, and she'll be perfectly fine after 5 minutes. Works wonders. Apparently, my tool in one context can be saving tool. In another one, can be a total disaster. Which leads us to another conclusion. Tool is defined, functionality of the tool is defined by the context, not by the tool itself. So if you use the tool that is called listening, maybe it's very good in marriage, maybe it's horrible in business consulting, because people really need advice. But I didn't know that, see? Because I was used to the model, cultural model of a man should know. If he doesn't, he's not good enough. It's a very common thing. I needed to get rid of that. It has taken me years to be able to finally get to the point that our business or organization or family, because it's still the same thing, right? It's just different names for it, works well. Because when she's happy, I'm happy, and we can have more. There's an interesting premise in this and in my attitude towards working with clients. In every paradigm and in every school of thought, there's always different ideas why people have problems. So you talk to Buddhists and they say, well, you have a problem because you had problems in a different karma. That's why. Now you're paying the price, right? So you go to a psychoanalyst and they say, why do you have problems? Because your childhood was very difficult, right? You go to a behavioralist and they say you have problems because you are habituated to do it a certain way. To a cognitive therapist and you say because you don't think right. I have a different premise when it comes to why people have problems. The premise that is based on visiting a doctor and doing this. Doctor, when I do this, it really hurts. What would you suggest the patient does?
Stop doing that.
Yes. So, but to stop doing that, you firstly have to realize what you're doing. And secondly, it's even more important, you have to substitute it, because every need will be executed on behavioral level. And this is what we spoke about before. no one is going to stop shouting when this is the only way they can motivate their kids to do homework. They will just not do it. So you, by creating yourself and listing activities, you realize that you can actually motivate people in a different way, or you can love them in a different way. An updated version of love is different in marriage after 10 years. To give you a few examples, when the child was born, I changed the way I perceived her attractiveness because she looked different. I had to. Otherwise, I would be sending her to cosmetic surgeon, right? Suggesting, please be younger. But it doesn't work this way. I had to change how I communicated with her when our kid was there. And this is interesting if you think about this, because if the child is in the family, then she becomes a mother and he's a father. What if he was her child? You remember how we spoke about this? What if he was treated as a child and now the real child is born? What happens with the relationship?
Competition.
There's the point. This is, I think about this. This is just so sad that you have parents competing with their children. Happens. Only if they are in role of the child. Because now there's another, like my brother and sister. Happens, and you see that, right? Fighting for attention. There's an adult man, his wife, officially, and their daughter. And she is, the daughter, she's talking with his wife. Daughter interrupts, as children do. He feels pissed off that she did because he feels rejected, rather than simply saying, it's fine, it will be okay. You see how it goes? So the way I would explain this in this system would be, you have certain behaviors. These behaviors are unconscious and are not yours and are well outdated. So you need to update how you behave right now, which would be ecological for the system on which you function. And you need to ask yourself a question, how do you want to do this now? I understand you want to love, perfect, but how? Is loving bringing money back home? Is loving hugging? Is loving having sex? And so on and so on. Love will change throughout your life. You will love people differently. What's more, you will love different people differently. Can you love your employees? Yes, you can, but not necessarily by hugging them. If someone has a definition of love that it's about physical contact, they will be unable to love this way most people who are different. But sooner or later, if you remember the definition of Jesus about love, he would say that we are all our brothers and sisters. Talk about totally different model. Is it useful from this perspective to have this model? Yes, it is, because if you treat all people like brothers and sisters, you get closer to them and you build rapport faster. Jesus' strategy were clever. You see, this is the attitude. It's a logical concept. I also gives emotional support to his wife, motivates, provides constructive feedback, listens and helps. Listener was a big game changer. Later I noticed that the Pareto rule of unhappy marriages is based on lack of listening and the fact that people convince themselves. Unfortunately, not realizing that if you convince another person to do something, proving you want to be right, if you are right, someone else is wrong. But in marriage, if one of you is wrong, both lose. In sports, one is right, another one is wrong, and that's okay. This is how sports function. But in marriage, if one is right and another one is wrong, then both lose. Then there was another one, invest in his wife, gifts, courses, problem solving. Well, it's an investment if you think about this, right? And how about children? Is it an investment? Well, you're going to be old one day. And if the relationship was good, then someone will be there to say goodbye to you and hold your hand when you die. But if you had a bad relationship, which means you didn't invest, then no one's going to be there. And you will die with all the money that you have, but unhappy. And this is definitely not the way to go, right? So if you want someone to hold your hand, you better work on it right now.
This is all of the stuff that you're doing and giving.
Yes.
You must have some expectations also. How do you manage your expectations in a relationship?
Oh. Firstly, I would expect that I won't have expectations, but it never works. Secondly, this is very interesting. It's included here. Because there is this premise, which I find very naive, that Firstly, there is unconditional love, which, by the way, seems to be a condition of unconditional love. That love has to be unconditional. I really don't believe that. This would be one. And secondly, that you should have no expectations, which, guess what, is an expectation, right? So rather than avoiding this, I would introduce it to the relationship, and I ask her, who do I need to be? What are the rules? What I shouldn't do so that you want to be with me? And she introduced it, and I introduced it, and I said, so you're asking me to be a monogamous husband for the rest of your life. I say, fine, I'll do that. These are my conditions. I want your faithfulness. If you're not faithful to me, we will not be together. That's my rule. This is pure negotiation, by the way, right? I want you to be attractive and take care of yourself. I want you to be present when we have conversations. And I want you to be independent. This is fundamental. I want her to have her own life. I don't want someone who is under me in an inferiority-superiority kind of way. So, when she listed her things, we agreed and we said, fine, let's do this. And we got married, right? So, this can change. But if you don't expect anything from others, firstly, you're lying to yourself because you are expecting. It's just not named. And if you don't name it, if you don't call it out, people don't know what to expect. And there's an incongruent message. You know what? Do what you want to do. You know, like people quarrel and say finally when they are like angry, they say, you know what? Do what you want to do. That's bullshit. You really don't let them do this. You want to say, I tell you what you should do. But if you tell what they should do, they have the right to negotiate with you. But if you say, do what you want to do, as a matter of fact, you're cheating. Because you don't want them to do what they want to do. This unconditional concept is a nice fairy tale, but it doesn't exist. Sooner or later, we are together, also in marriage, because one wants something from another. Part of it is sexual, part of it is emotional, part of it is logical.
So there's really another window on expectation.
Yeah, this is it. Once.
Oh, one. So.
Do you know #1 conflict in reason for conflict in relationships? Money. Talk about love when you pay the bills. See, we really should understand how marriage functions. Pay the bills, and later talk about love. Because if you start about, it's very Californian, by the way, caring, sharing, loving, unconditional, but bills are not paid, probably you will get divorced. #2 is sex. And #3 is children. You better get that straight. People don't really quarrel about not flushing the toilet. It's just justification. When they are so pissed off, they don't want to be together anymore. And then whatever happens doesn't work. Does this make sense what I'm talking about? Goes on dates with her, cinema, restaurant, theater, disco. We dance together. It's an amazing thing to bring us closer. It's very intimate, by the way. I noticed that when we started doing this, because obviously it's very kinesthetic, there's a lot of touching. It's a beautiful thing. Got us more to be together. Converses, asks, talks with her about his life, cares about her life, touches and hugs. This one, kisses, she introduced it. She says, I have a petition. I want this ritual. When you leave for work, you kiss me in the morning, before work. When you wake up, you kiss me. Before work, before leaving, you kiss me. You kiss me when you come back from work and before we go to sleep. This is what she wanted.
Oh, she's seen this?
Of course.
Oh.
Of course, she's seen it. Otherwise, why would I create a husband for myself? This is like watching pornography and thinking that you're married, right? This really doesn't work like this. Guys, remember from the first, for the ones who were here in the first seminar today, personal brand is not for you. Role is not for you.
This.
Well, of course, she also negotiated certain parts of it. She said one of the first things that she didn't want, and I totally understood this, was coaching and teaching. This is what I do, this is what I'm strong at. It's just very destructive for the marriage. I stopped doing this. And when I stopped, our problems disappeared, just like stop hitting your leg. Don't coach your wife. She doesn't want that. She wants a husband. She wants to be a partner. She doesn't want your teachings, right? Okay. So, when it comes to what I'm working on right now is changing her. Changing her means I know what's good for you. This premise is destructive because it creates an incongruence between two images. One image is who she is, another who I imagine her to be. So the process of changing her is, I don't want to be you, I want you to be my picture of you. And this is changing somebody, right? So this is what I'm working on right now. This changes more or less every 3 months when we update it. It would be updated if there was some revolutionary problem that would appear. Like for instance, if someone gets sick or whatever, then probably I would update it again, right? But right now, it's maintenance period. It's really not first impression period. So when I come back on Wednesday, I'll be back home. And when I come back, I won't do this. Honey, hello. She goes, what are you doing? And I'll go, first impression. She says, I've known you for 10 years. It's really too late for that, right? It's maintenance period. If I maintain it, if I do this, marriage will work. If it works, I can focus on dominating all different markets in the world. You understand? But if this didn't work, I wouldn't be able to do this. And being an economist, I understand a few things. For the last 10 years, when we've been together, I finished my psychology, master's in psychology. I did my PhD. I make 15 times more money after that, and I look way better. I lost around 60 pounds. There must be something in her that she added to it. You understand? I don't really see it as cause-effect directly in our thinking. I know it's exponential, it's 3D connection, but I understand there's part to it, right? Also, when I come back home and I'll be thinking about my future, I will consider you to be one of the reasons why I'm more intelligent. It's exponential. Everything leads to everything, right? Does this make sense for you?
Yes.
Useful?
Yes.